Hi, scrappy friends. This is Hannah with you on the Shimmerz Paints Design Team YouTube channel. And I wanted to share with you a layout that I made. So recently I've been seeing a lot of people play with Distress Oxides. And doing a lot of blending and stuff. So I thought, why not try to do this with some shimmer stuff? So I have a ton of Shimmerz pots there and some different Inklings and Creameez. And so the color that I'm using right now is Lapis Dance. And I use that sponge and it had a little bit of water on it. And I was hoping that I could get it to look like I had blended it with an ink pad. However, it didn't really look the way I wanted it to look. I did use clear gesso on this paper. I also am using a really thicker, like American Craft smooth cardstock. So the second color, which is Ride the Tide, so it's a little bit lighter, I used my paintbrush and I just added the color that way. So now I'm taking some Peacock's Plume, and that is an actual Shimmerz pot. So that has a lot more substance to it than the Lapis Dance and the Ride the Tides. Those are like Creameez and ink type pots. And those ones, the Lapis Dance is really dark, but the Ride the Tide is not that dark. So I am mixing colors and I'm wanting it to look watercolory and kind of blended. So I also am hoping that if I splatter water on it after it kind of dries a little bit, that I can pull off some of the color to give that Distress Oxide look. So now I'm moving down or up. It's really down, but it'll be up right now. And I'm going to move on to some purple. So I have a picture that is purple and blue because it's lavender and you can see the blue background. So I'm knowing that I'm using that picture for this. Now I know that this is not very fall-like because the picture was taken in August and these are really bright colors. It ends up being like super bright. But I'm okay with that because, you know, sometimes at the beginning of September, right about now, you're still trying to scrap some of those summer photos and you still want to pull on some of these colors that can be fall-like or can be summery. So here I use some Plum Crazy, and that is, I think that's an Inkling, but I could be wrong. And that one's super dark too. So it's a lot like the Lapis Dance. And as you can see, I dried it with my paper towel to get some of the bigger pieces off. And I added some water. And as you can see, it looks a lot more like the Distress Oxide. So I'm liking this look. This is kind of what I'm wanting. I mean, it still isn't the same. So you're not going to get a blended look the way you would if you're using like an ink pad. But you can get something really cool and get that lift off of the color. So this color is Paradise Punch. It is also a really light Creameez color. And so I'm taking some of that darker Plum Crazy and just sprinkling it on. Now I'm pulling some Iris, my case, and this is a blue purpley color. It's really pretty. And so I'm just moving it around a little bit to get that watercolor look again, trying to blend the two colors together, blend the splatter colors in there, get some of the purples on with the blue, and I am gonna dry this. I do use my heat gun quite a bit with this. I will say when you use your heat gun, you're gonna get warpiness. There's really no way around it. I used a ton of water. So now I am taking some of that 24 carats foils, the Dazzler's foils, and this is like super gold. It's like gold in a jar. It's lovely and amazing, and it works really fun. And a stencil, I've used it so many different ways lately. There's my cat, Amberly. She loves coming up on my desk. There's a window right next to my desk, so she'll come up and she'll sit in the windowsill and watch the birds or see what I'm doing. Try to get me to pet her. So I will apologize. I used some dazzlers and textures. Actually, I think I just used the textures. And I'm going to use that stencil, and I'm going to use that sponge, and I'm going to just blot these two colors. So I have Whitey Tidy and Patina. And I'm going to blot those colors. I believe I used a little bit of Paradise Punch in with the Whitey Tidy just to get that purple color. So now you can see that I have the foils with the stencil, and I also have the dazzlers, or the textures. They're like dazzlers, but they have texture grit in them. But because I use the sponge, you don't see that as much. And I really wanted that. I wanted something that was, you could see some of the color, and some of what I'm doing now is just going back over that first bit because I really didn't like that it looked so much different. So I'm just going to add some more lapis dance. I should have taken my paper towel and just hit it a little bit. Now I thought, hey, maybe I could add a little bit more color to some of these spots where I have my stencil and stuff and get some fun colors. I do not like how that turned out. The 24 carats, even though it did mix really well with the Creameez and stuff, it was a little bit too much gold. So I'm also going over the blue color again. And like I said, this is Ride the Tide, so it's just a little bit lighter. And I am going to go back over and do the same lift that I did with the purple as well. I'm trying to mimic that, like I said, that oxide look. It's not quite the same, but I really do like how it looks. And I do try to blend it a little bit. And I will say that even though these dry and set quite well, it does mix a little bit when you add more stuff on top and you re-wet it. So I will say you probably don't want to spill something on your layout that you've done stuff with. And so now I'm just adding a little bit of that dark color once again, trying to get just a smidge bit more of the cast off, of the lift off, so I can have that splatter look. So this is completely dry, and I'm going to use this Maggie Holmes paper as my a border. And I'm doing this because I know that my paper is very warped and I want just a little bit more stability. It is not necessary. I could have just left it and it would have been fine. But I find that when I use a ton of media like this, I really do like a little bit of structure onto that. And by adhering it, and I just use a little bit of extra ATG. So I think, so I'm going to cut this down a little bit, but then I also, on two of the sides, just kind of rip it a little bit, so it does give it a little texture, because it's not going to sit on there perfect anyway. So if I give it some texture, maybe you're not going to notice. And once it's in my album and all these other layouts are sitting on it, it will lay flatter. But it's not gonna completely go back to normal. So just know when you use a lot of media like this and you're using a lot of water, that it's paper. So there's my cat again. Very curious what I'm doing. So I made sure that on each of the side I did two really good lines, and then I did some stuff in the middle. And this is just going to help it just really adhere. So hopefully it doesn't. Now, I thought about using my sewing machine, and I could have did that and it probably would have looked amazing. But I decided against it because I just didn't feel like it. So and I already used the glue, and I will say if I know I'm gonna stitch, I won't use as much ATG. Now the stitching will help it sit, but I'm gonna do the faux stitching and just, you know, doodle on there. And I think that adds a fun little element when you do a lot of mixed media like this. And so now I'm gonna work on how I want some layers to go with my photo. I'm thinking I really like this idea of taking some strips of paper and rip them. I've seen quite a few people do similar things like this. And so, you know, sometimes when you start seeing things around, you want to play around with it. So, and I tend to rip papers anyway, so I don't have a problem ripping papers. I know some people really have a hard time with that, and, you know, I get it. It's paper, and who wants to rip it and waste it and stuff, but I thought that this would look really nice with all of the media that I already have going on. So I decided that instead of having the torn edges on the sides, which if I had thought about it, I would have ripped it differently, but I didn't. And that's how I roll, and I'm okay with that. I'm just going to go with it, go with the flow, because this is the fun part. Well, not that the other part isn't fun, because I love the media part, but the media part is just something I do to play and almost get that mojo going. So sometimes it is really hard when I have to stop. So just know, if you're someone who likes to follow through with a layout, just give yourself lots of time and you can totally make it work. So I know I want to use that doily, and I'm going to use some of that other blue. I'm trying to pick papers that either are black and white or have similar colors that are on my layout, background, or in my photo. And so I'm just pulling some stuff that I have, some stuff that I've been playing around with lately, and some other stuff that is new or in my stash. I do realize that there is some pink in those Oasis papers, but I'm going to be okay with that, even though there's not really a lot of pink. There's not really any pink in my background, but that's okay, right? It's okay. And also, I don't have a whole lot of green going on, and so that's why I'm pulling that Shimmerz paper, and I use that Heidi Swap green as my border, just to add a tidge, just a tiny smidge, tidge, which is, I guess, my word for a little teeny tiny bit of more of that color. I don't need a lot of greens because, I mean, I really want it to be about that blue and that purple, and I really want you to be able to see that background, and I really didn't want to cover it up too much because it just looks really fun, but it is very plain in the sense of that the layers that I built allow me to add more stuff on. I know sometimes in the past I've done stuff where I've done a whole lot of media and then people are like, you covered it up. And sometimes I do that. Sometimes I cover it up because I just want a little bit. And even though I spent all that time creating something really fun, it's more the therapy of it than actually having all of it show. But this time I intentionally knew I wanted a lot of it to show up. I wanted it to be like the sky and the lavender. And so, yeah. So I added a little bit of that Shimmerz paper down at the bottom so it peeks through. I'm going to use some thread. So I have some gold and I have some like mint, some light sea green minty color. And I put those together, and I am stapling those up at the top and the bottom. I have another cluster in where I will add just gold. So I thought about leaving out that Shimmerz paper in the middle, and I am using my stapler to attach them kind of all together, and then I'm going to glue it down because I really didn't want I didn't want to pull it apart is really why I did that. I didn't want to pull it apart because I knew if I pulled it apart, it wouldn't be the way that I had it. And I was a little bit worried about that. So now I'm going to go in with my glue and just kind of hit a few pieces. And I do have to go back over and just make sure because like the doily isn't going to stick very well. I found this vellum of butterfly cut file that I guess I had cut out like who knows how long. And I'm going to use it because it's going to add textures and layers. And even though I do have quite a bit in that cluster, I feel like it's not as much as I normally do. So if I can add just one more little bit of something, it's not going to feel like I didn't do much on, even though I did a lot on the background. And I really do want that photo, and I want, you know, the background to like pop and punch. And I will say I do know that the colors for the blues and the purples aren't quite the same. Like if I had just used the Ride the Tide and the Iris My Case, I probably would have got more of that color that is in my photo, but I actually really like just that gradient of color. I feel like it plays really well. You get these lights and darks and different pieces, and it just makes it super fun. So definitely make sure you do something fun with your products that you guys buy, because I mean, there are so many different ways. And, you know, if you think that you see a technique with something else, like I said, like the oxides, you know, a lot of people I've been seeing do that. And I don't have that many. And, but I have Shimmerz, you know, watercolors, and I can use those in a similar technique. So, try to take what you see someone else do with a different product and apply it to a product that you do have, and you'd be surprised what you can do. So I am just adding some more layers. I had cut up a 6x6 pad that had like a cut apart sheet, and because it's a 6x6 pad, it has like little tiny pieces. So I added some pieces on the top and the bottom just to build some clusters there so that I have something. So it's not completely empty, because I was worried about it, like I said, feeling really empty and not feeling like a layout that I did. And I don't mind it looking different, but there are just some things that I really like having layers, and I really like to have clusters that have some layers. So I'm adding some of those puffy stickers, and they just make for fun. And I found this little printable piece that says Weekend Getaway, which is what that picture was from. Me and my scrappy friend, she came to visit, and we went to a lavender farm. So it was really fun to just go and do something. And I decided that I wanted to add one more puffy sticker up at the top. I'm going to use some hearts and some enamel dots in similar colors on the layout. So the purples are going to go in the purple area, and the blues are going to go in the blue area. I think I did add a blue right down at the bottom, and in the middle I kind of move around a little bit too. But I did try to keep light colors with light colors, and I didn't add a heart up at the top, so I just did it in two different places. So now I'm going to take this cut file that I had also found in my stash, and I'm going to use some similar colors that I already used on my layout, with the exception of that old yeller. That's an Inklingz. And all of these you have to add a little bit of water to them and rehydrate them. I find that where I live, actually when I lived in Hawaii and here, that because it's super humid, they don't dry up nearly as fast. And I will say that I have had a couple that if they don't dry out enough and the moisture really gets stuck in there, they don't do so well. So they get like a layer of film on the top and a skin, and it's a lot harder to mix back up. So if you know you live in an area that's really wet, just leave the top off for a little bit and just let it dry out, or just keep your eye on it. And I've had some that have done really well, and like I said, I've had a couple that they really just benefit from letting them dry back out. The shimmer pots, however, those ones just automatically will stay wet. And I have found over time the shimmer pots, those ones, you might have to add water to it later. And that was one thing that if you're afraid to just add water, you could also use like a fluid medium as well. That also will could help to keep it hydrated. But the water, I found that the water works fine for this, what I'm doing. And so now that this is all done and dry, and it just says smell of, and I'm going to put lavender with other thickers. And I did use the Plum Crazy and the Ride the Tide. And so I used those two colors, and then I used the Old Yeller, just like splatters. So, and I used a little bit of Paradise Punch just in the middle part where I was mixing the two colors together. And so I didn't have a D in that, just that plain gold. So I am pulling out some Pink Fresh Studio, and there's these ones that have the different colors, and they had two different color purples. So it was perfect. And so I am going to switch out the A, so it's not just the D. So it's just going to be the A and the D that are two different ones, and I'm okay with it just being that way. If I had planned it better, just like I said, it's not something that I always do. And then I'm just going to splatter with some Old Yeller, just so I get a little bit more gold like the sun. So thank you guys for joining me today. Definitely make sure you hit the like and subscribe button if you liked this, and if you want to see more Shimmerz layouts, because there's a whole lot of us who post here. And also make sure you hit the notification so that you get the notifications when we post videos. Definitely check out the links so that you can see all the products that I've used from the store, and make sure that if you mention me, you can get a free little item. So I'll see you guys later, and have a great scrappy week. Bye.